सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै।
ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। ॐ सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। कार्पण्यदोषोपहत स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः। यश्श्रेयस्यानिश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधिमां त्वां प्रपन्नम्। ॐ वाङ्मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविर्आवीर्मएधि वेदस्य म आणिस्तः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासिः अनेन अधीतेन अहोरात्रान् सन्ददामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारम् अवतु अवतु मामवतु वक्तारम् अवतु वक्तारम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गे स्तुष्टुवाग्वं स्वस्तिनोभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति न पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति न साक्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिव कीर्तिपृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्वो पवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वममृतम् अस्मि द्रविडं त्वं सवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इति त्रिशङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Narayan Kavita, Narayan Bhagyashree. So good to see you both. Such a long time. Okay, so it's been 2 weeks of break. In the last class, we focused on what we are basically looking at now is the consequences of various gunas, how they affect us in various ways, right? So one of the first things that we looked at was what is the gati, or what are the consequences? What is the gati of our soul after our death? And we looked at what are the consequences on us on a physical level. How do we feel, or what are the consequences at a physical real of the three gunas? And we also talked about what is the orientation of thoughts, what kind of thoughts get created by the three gunas, right? So first of all, what is the orientation of thoughts? The orientation of thoughts is that when sato guna is on the ascendancy, then there is an inclination to acquire knowledge. Okay, an inclination to acquire knowledge. Mind is eager to gain it, and it and we are doing righteous acts. And these righteous acts, when we indulge in righteous acts, what are the righteous acts that we've been told about? There are 10 righteous acts, or the 10 dharmas, that will be done when the Satokun is on the ascendancy, and vice versa. When we indulge in those 10 righteous acts, when we are doing those dharmas, then Sato Gun will become on an ascendancy. So if you are in Tamo Gun, you are in Rajo Gun, and you perform these 10 acts, they will cause an ascendancy of Sato Gun in our lives. Those 10 principles or the 10 dharmas are Dhriti, fortitude, Kshama, forgiveness, Dam, self-restraint, then Tayam, Tayam, non-stealing, Shaucham, purity, Indriya Nigraha, which is restraint of our senses. Then Vidya, purity of the purity of intellect, and then Vidya, acquisition of knowledge, Satya, truthfulness, Akrodha, issuing of anger, right? These are the 10 dharma, dharma ke lakshan. When we perform these, they create an ascendancy of Satogun. And when Satogun is on the ascendance, it's easy to perform these 10 dharmas. Okay. And the gati of our life is that after death, the person who dies in the ascendancy of Satogun rises up to the higher realms. Right? So there are 7 higher realms and 7 lower realms. Such a person in the Stratoguni ascendancy rises to the higher realms, and he will have more connection with other souls that are much higher in their journey, right? So you will have you will be able to establish connection with people with higher consciousness as well, right? In case of rajas, when you when there is death at the time of preponderance of rajas, then you can take a birth in human species, so आप योग लोक में आएंगे, or it will be in the lower lokas, depending on what kind of rajasic activity there is, right? We've realized that rajasic activity can be of 2 types. When we talked about the varnas, remember? So there is a rajasic activity which is done for the welfare of others, which is the kshatriya varna. And there is rajasic activity which is only for our selfish interest, which is in the vaishya varna. And then there is rajasic activity which tends towards tamasic, where you're actually hurting others, right? You're acting out of revenge, you're acting out of anger. So all of those things will determine ki you stay in the bhulok or whether you descend to the lower loks. And even in the bhulok, when you're born in bhulok, what kind of family you are born in, what kind of environment you are born in, what sort of status of life you're born in, what resources are made afforded to you, right? All of this is to a certain extent dependent on the type of the what is the ascendancy of that rajogun that you when you die, and what is the prarabdha you've accumulated, how much of yoga you have done in your life, and what prarabdha needs to be extinguished at that time. And if there is tamogun in ascendancy at the time of death, then there is surely descendants into the lower 7 realms. And we also realize that our life actually for most of us is filled with rajogun and tamogun, which we have to now start to identify, right? And rajasic acts always lead to sorrow. The thoughts that are propelled by rajas is always they impel, rajas impels us into action, and that action is typically always um, it is it is founded on the basis of some kind of greed, some kind of desire, okay, a desire to acquire something from outside of some kind, and that acquisitive nature कि हमें कुछ चाहिए life में, physical nature, material world, physical world, mentally, emotionally हमें कुछ चाहिए. When we do activities based on that, हमें किसी से appreciation चाहिए, हमें किसी से कुछ भी चाहिए, right? Appreciation, name, fame, acceptance, or other material things. Whenever those are the kind of thoughts that create rajasic activity. When rajas is on the ascendancy, these are the kind of thoughts that come. A rajasic person can never be sukhi, and a sattvic person can never be dukhi. क्योंकि सात्विक जो आदमी है वो he's internally satisfied. Okay, he is detached, he's in that brahman varna, right? When we are in that brahman varna, when we are in that brahman varna, We are not attached to anything. We are not attached to any person. We are not attached to any outcomes. We are not attached to any results or any material objects. Whereas in the Rajasic one, whether it is in the Kshatriya form where you're doing things for others, or whether it is in the Vaishya form where you're doing things for yourself, you're always attached to something. Hmm? And tamasic acts always lead to further delusion, further useless activity, and further ignorance. It perpetuates our ignorance. जो बुद्धि तामसिक बुद्धि है उसको कभी समझ ही नहीं आएगा कि आपको सही एक्ट अगर आप उनको बताएंगे तो वो समझ ही नहीं आएगा उनको करना क्यों है किस लिए करना है राइट सो दैट्स अ वेरी बिग डिफरेंस तमस में आप वो अच्छी एक्टिविटीज ही नहीं करोगे राजसिक भाव में आप एक्टिविटीज करोगे लेकिन एक अटैचमेंट के साथ करोगे मुझे ये चाहिए मुझे इस आदमी से ये चाहिए मुझे इस आदमी से वो चाहिए मुझे ये आउटकम अचीव करना है हमेशा हमारा एक रीजन रहेगा which is an outcome based reason why we are doing an activity all righteous acts but attached to an outcome and in satogun we will do righteous acts with no expectation we are doing things because it is the right thing to do क्योंकि ये हमारा धर्म है हम केवल इसलिए कर रहे हैं उसके बाद जो उसका रिजल्ट हो चाहे ना हो you're not it doesn't bother us right when satogun is on the ascendancy and tamogun का जब ascendancy रहता है then the thoughts are always around useless activity है ना and there is complete confusion about what is right what is wrong हम right को wrong बोलते हैं wrong को right बोलते हैं और हमारी जो बुद्धि है intellect will follow that it will create lot of elaborate arguments around why it is important for example to drink alcohol why is it good to drink alcohol we've all done that I've done that right we create all kinds of good reasons as to why it is important and we cannot do without socially drinking right so ये these are all tamasic thoughts क्योंकि वो तमस का जब ascendancy है it is going to completely confound our intellect and we will create elaborate reasons as to why we need to continue to do what we are doing it creates justifications massive justifications for what we do in our life सबसे बड़ा तमस हम सबके अंदर क्या आएगा which is something that we all should remember inability to change our behavior inability to change our habits is nothing but tamas हम ऐसा ही करते आए हैं और हम ऐसा ही करते रहेंगे वो जो मान्यता है वो तमस है इट इज तमस इन अस इनर्शिया है हम सीखना नहीं चाहते कि हमें क्यों चेंज होना है वी आर कंफर्टेबल इन आवर कंफर्ट जोन है ना so that's where we have that's where we have come to thus far in this chapter okay now we are going to talk about the direction of life which we will take under the influence of each good okay so we are still talking about consequences in a different aspect consequences of each of these three gunas or what and you will find that these are like you know they the consequences then strengthens the guna right so it's like a cycle actions that lead to ascendancy of certain gunas the ascendancy of gunas then lead to certain types of actions so it's a self-fulfilling kind of a prophecy after a point okay Anita do you want to read with us shloka 18 so connection before that
Shloka, which one?
18 chapter 14 shloka 18 connection just before that connection after 17
The Lord now tells the direction which the life of human being takes under the influence of each guna.
ऊर्ध्व गच्छन्ति सत्वस्था
Udvam gachanti sattvastha
मध्ये तिष्ठन्ति राजसाः
madhye tishtanti rajasaha
जघन्य गुणवृत्तिस्थाः
jiganya guna viruddhastha
अधो गच्छन्ति तामसाः
Ado gacchanti tamashaha. Those abiding in sattva rise higher and higher. Those aboded in rajas remain in the middle, and the tamasic ones abiding in low tendencies sink downward. Direction given by the gunas in evolution of the self. This shloka speaks of the direction in which the individualized self evolves under the influence of the gunas. When the mind is kept filled with the thoughts of sattva nature, sattvic nature, consciousness becomes subtler and subtler. And in the same proportion, its involvement with gross things of life becomes weaker and weaker. Experiencing the subtle changes of life, it became happier and happier, and it is set to rise higher and higher.
So just like we read in the previous shloka, out here this refers to how we experience the guna. So when you are feeling light, right? When you are feeling the lightness of completing your tasks, or if each day the lightness in your day is increasing, that means Satogun is in driver's seat, right? And that becomes a very important yardstick for us. Are we able to approach each day with the lightness of energy, or versus the heaviness of energy, or versus, oh my God, I have so much more work to do, right? These three become very important markers for ourselves to become aware which guna is in ascendancy. For most of us, sattvic energy comes for ascendancy during our satsang, during our sadhana. But the moment we go back to the world, we interact with the world with a different energy. Most of the tasks we do will be out of like negative energy. Not negative, but even just like, oh my God, I have to do this also. Oh my God, this guy didn't finish the report, now I have to sit and do it. That's tamasic energy that you brought into your rajasic world. But the reason why sattvic energy is referred to as lightness is because our very nature of being the soul is subtle. So when we interact not with the things in the world, but with the bhav of the world and the purpose of the world, we are interacting with the subtle. And when we interact with the subtle, we understand its true purpose, that everything is a lesson or a blessing. And when we interact with the world with that principle, with that bhav, with the subtlety of the world, you automatically feel that lightness because we are interacting, we're going closer to our own subtle nature, which is the soul, right? So we've shared this example, right? People in this Gita group who've been there for years, there is a yoga sadhana group. They see the sunrise every day and they only see the subtlety of the sunrise. And they share a picture with that bhav, and you can just see that's the way they're looking at the world. Otherwise, we are just looking at it as a sunrise. Most of us don't even look at the sunrise. We just take it for granted. Ah, the sun's come up, daylight has started. And that's the difference. Interacting with the subtlety of the world, the bhav of the world, you start generating the lightness that is comes with being sattvic. Yeah, Vijay.
Yeah. You are mentioning about like when we are back into the world, then like our attitude changes, right? Like certain things, say at office, so they are pressurizing you to send somebody home, for fire them or whatever, for whatever company's reason and stuff, which you are not inclined to, right? Like you are doing it with a kind of like a bitterness there, right? So, very much. Thank you. சரி வெயிட் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க பேசிட்டு வரேன். Sorry about it. So if you are doing certain things without your full interest, right, that's going to carry a different bhav any which ways, right? You are not inclined for that kind of a mode of operation or whatever it is, but you are where you'll have to do that. So if that is the case, how to deal with that?
So it's a very relevant example. Um, so firstly, when someone is, and I'm going to make some assumptions, right? When I have in the past fired, or when you're firing, you're basically cutting fat in the organization so that the organization survives. And if the organization survives and thrives, that's an act of Lok Sangra. You will also thrive because the organization is thriving. Now, the fact that you are letting go of someone, you firstly need to understand why, where, understand the reason of why you're letting go of that person. But the bhav in your mind is you're not letting this person go because this person is bad, or you're letting go of this person because you are attached to that person. You're not letting go of that person because you are attached to that person and comfort of working that person. Maybe the person you are letting go, his future, his destiny, his prarabdha is some to experience this, and that will take him to greater heights later. Who are you to control that outcome? Who are you to control? No, this person, the best situation is to continue in this job with me so that my results are achieved. So you have to reflect on where your attachment sits in this conversation, right? Life is very fluid. If you are a manager, if you are an executive of the company, your dharma towards that company is the survival of that organization. The
Towards other colleagues also.
Correct. So when you let them go, you don't just let them go, you offer your full support.
So, Vijay, it all depends. See, the act of letting a person go is one act in an organization, right? And उसमें जो आपका what you need to be very careful about is what is the bhav with which you let a person go. That is the most important thing here, and that is where you are in satogun, rajogun, or tamogun. So उसमें see first there are a lot of layers here, lot of layers. Okay, I'll just bring out a couple of layers. The first layer is, and these are the layers that I have experienced myself and discerned. That's why I'm able to talk about it. I'm sure there are millions others that I haven't discerned yet. But one of the layers is हम करता धरता नहीं है किसी के. It is not because of me that somebody has a job or somebody is taking home a salary. I am not like causing that person's ghar to move on. Okay. I become an instrument of letting that person go or hire a person, it is not me, it is him. He's taking care of that person, he's brought him to this organization, he will take him to another organization, another place. So that is the very first thing. Okay, we take unnecessary burden of responsibility on our shoulders, and that is a play of the ego on us. Okay, that's one. Second, how we let a person go is extremely important. See, in certain cases, when we recognize that the person is, there is nothing wrong with a person, but there could be a mismatch between a person. If you're letting a person go because of performance issues, for example, right? There may be a mismatch between this person's strengths and what the role requires. He will never thrive in that role in that case. It is better for him to find another place where he's going to thrive. Because just the way the company or his manager or his team members are feeling like this person is being a drag to the organization, similarly, that person himself, every human being wants to thrive and contribute and feel valued. If he is not feeling valued in this organization, it is a negative experience for him on a daily basis. It is better for him to get out of that experience and create a new reality somewhere else where he's going to be able to contribute in a much, much better fashion. And it is our duty to make sure that our communication is appropriately packaged. And then with that bhav, we try and help them as much as we can in getting them to the next level. And we do everything with a layer of sadbhav and sadachar, with a full amount of respect to that person, and we give them whatever help we can in deboarding and further onboarding, or if they ask us for any help in that process, we provide that. We give them ample time if that is possible. If it is not possible, whatever, like, everything, it depends, right? In certain cases, I've had cases where we've had to extend insurance to make sure that the person is able to transition out properly. like all kinds of things, right? वो भाव पे depend करता है, and with that भाव, you can help the person and leave him even in severance with a very, very positive feelings rather than a negative feeling. है ना? And find out कि क्यों किया जा रहा है, and then accordingly help that situation. Make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you.
If the mind is absorbed in rajas, it gets involved in activity impelled by desires. If tamasic thoughts are kept subdued and the sattvic thoughts are kept nearly at par with the rajasic thoughts, good acts are performed. Though they are all in fulfillment of desires, such a person is able to remain in the middle, neither racing high into the subtle nor sinking down into the gross. But if tamasic thoughts
So
fill the
let's,
mind,
let's pause here. Let's pause here, right? So this is the second energy, which is the guna of rajas. And this is really important to understand, and because a lot of us operate from this particular guna all the time. तो बिन्नी को बोल दे off कर दे थोड़ी देर में. This is where we operate from most of the time, where we are fully engaged with duty and activity. We are keeping our sattvic thoughts at the same par by doing satsang, by working on our working on self improvement, reading the right things, practicing the right principles, all of those things, right? But subtly we are motivated by desire, not by moksha. And that's how we use sattvic energy. And what this book is saying, what Gita is saying, if you operate from that perspective, you are just maintaining status quo.
But
You're
status
not
quo,
necessarily culling your karma, your past karma.
But let's be clear, this fact of like remaining as status quo, it means कि एक तो you are doing all righteous acts. Okay, so there is a lot of rajasic activity going on with a with a this thing of like कि हमको I want some desire to be fulfilled. But as you see, you have to have equal amount of sattvic thoughts. अगर वो sattvic thoughts होंगे, there are a lot of tamasic activities which are going to be kept in check. Gossip, judgment, anger, ये सब चीजें आपको ऐसे लोगों में नहीं दिखेंगी. The people who keep up that par, that is very important to know.
See, Rajasna, it sits in the middle. All right. Rajas, any act of Rajas, the guna, the way it works, is fueled by desire. Now, the desire can be sattvic or the desire can be tamasic.
Or
that desire can either be for yoga, which is connecting to Bhagwanji, or the desire can be bhog, which is more consumption. Right? So if your rajasic activity is not fueled with the right purpose and bhav, which is for yoga and duty and seva and lok sangra, you can know for a fact it is fueled by tamasic energy. Right? So every action that you are doing, it will happen regardless of whether you do it or not. It is in our control what bhav we bring to that action, whether we're doing it with tamasic energy or we're doing it with sattvic energy. You do it with sattvic energy, you will slowly move from rajasic to sattvic. But if you have only equal number of sattvic thoughts and also allow tamasic thoughts to come in, when you do
thoughts have to be kept in check.
Yeah, they have to be kept in check. If not, then rajas will, you'll start to seep down. And that heaviness we all experience. Right?
So think of, when you are thinking of this, right, think of it like this, कि जितने भी material desires है ना, they are like little weights, है ना? So think of a balloon, right, which wants to filled with helium gas, which is looking to rise high. And then you tie little weights to those helium balloons to keep it down, right? The more number of desires you have, the more attachments you have, all of them, or anger, upset, so they all have different weights, right? Tamasic thoughts have the highest weight. सबसे heavy thoughts वही होते हैं, है ना? So those thoughts will keep it grounded even higher, or it will sink it lower. And some thoughts, some desires are lighter than others, but they all have the ability to pull you down, and they all are weights. जैसे जैसे आप एक 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 अटैचमेंट, एक अटैचमेंट डिजायर्स आप काटते जाते हैं, the soul becomes lighter and lighter and lighter, right? Because then and the balloon will rise higher and higher and higher. Think of it like that. So naturally we are in the space of satogun. That is our natural state. And then we attach all these little weights which bring us down. The more you attach to it, the more weights you attach to it, the deeper it will sink. जितना तामसिक एक्टिविटीज एंड तामसिक थॉट्स में हम लोग इंगेज होंगे, उतना ज्यादा हम नीचे जाते जाएंगे. Okay? And as I said, the one tamasic thought will create another tamasic thought or act, and which will create another tamasic thought or act. Like they are all virtuous in nature. आप जब सतोग, similarly सतोग. So every emotion, every act has its own ability or its own desire to self-propagate itself. Okay, so if you're in anger, you will see that anger will want to jump out of you and ignite anger in other people around you. Similarly, happiness. A person walks in with a bright smile, he brightens up the whole room. It creates a sense of happiness and lightness in everybody's hearts. Every emotion is like that, and similarly, gunas are like that.
One of the big markers for Rajagun Bhav is very strong association of doership, very strong association of ownership and control.
Ownership, control, and doership. Correct.
These three things,
Absolutely.
right? So, and we tend to approach most things with this bhav. I want to control the outcome. I control my employee's fate, right? I want to control my environment around me constantly, right? Whether it's my children, whether it's my home, whether it's food, whether it's whatever.
हम
Right.
पहले अपनी
All
लाइफ
of
कंट्रोल
that-
करना चाहते हैं, फिर अपने बच्चों की लाइफ कंट्रोल करना चाहते हैं, फिर उनके बच्चों की लाइफ कंट्रोल करना चाहते हैं. It's the natural way for all of us to be.
And that is rajas. And
it comes from a space of ego, doership.
always, that is the definition of ego, right?
Hmm.
Control and ownership is the definition of ego. Ownership is that barcode thing, that distinctiveness that we have, that ego creates, but also the sense of I am controlling. And that is what we need to give up.
And I am doing.
I am doing.
हर चीज जो कर रहे हैं वो मैं कर रहा हूं, मैं कर रही हूँ, मैंने किया, मैं नहीं होती तो ये नहीं होता. वो sense of doership which we all carry within ourselves. That's rajas. And rajas is never far from tamas. Always, so in every act of rajas, there is going to be a seed of sorrow planted. So remember, every time you are indulging in pleasures and in happiness in your living room, know that sorrow is waiting for you in your bed, in the bedroom. You will get there. There is no escaping it. It's the cost you pay for indulging in that pleasure. There is no pleasure indulgence without you paying a cost for it. वो आज आप पे करो, चाहे एक महीने बाद पे करो, चाहे एक साल बाद, चाहे 10 साल बाद, but you will pay the cost of indulging in pleasure. Yeah, Vizarch.
So Rajasic, it has three kinds, right? One is the ownership and control. The last one is
Doership. Doership, ownership, and sense of control. Let's go ahead.
But if tamasic thoughts fill the mind, subduing the sattvic thoughts of righteousness and the rajasic thoughts of dynamism, the human being sinks lower and lower, with the consciousness oriented towards towards baser and baser tendencies. This shloka should
This,
be
so this tamasic energy, guna, basically refers to our basal animality. When our intellect is completely crowded and we experience life just for its pleasure. and we just try to get the pleasure of life and do everything we need to get out with the pain or blame everybody else for the pain and focus just on my convenience and my pleasure.
Pleasure of all the senses, right? So that is your tamasic thoughts. Animalistic tendencies are also in a more subtle way, right? I think हम लोग को gross way में तो समझ में आता है, right? Indulging too much in food, indulging too much in relaxation, indulging too much in sleep. ये सब हमें समझ में आता है, ये बहुत obvious है ना? At a subtler level, like one tamoguni thing that I talked about was our inability to change our habits is tamogun. Another aspect of tamogun which we experience on a daily basis is our inability to act and our constant reactions. जो reactions है ना हमारे reactions जब हम react करते हैं किसी भी situation पे, that is acting out of habit, and that is acting out of instinct, long formed habits. That is tamogun taking over. जब हम लोग pause लेते हैं and we think before we act, that is when we've got tamogun subdued. So tamogun, now why are we reading all of these things? ये सब पढ़ने के बाद ऐसा लगता है अरे तमोगुण इज लाइक हॉरिबल, रजोगुण भी बेकार है, बस सतोगुण ही सतोगुण होना चाहिए. दैट इज नॉट ट्रू. ओके, why we are reading all of this is because one, all these three gunas will always be present and life cannot go on without these three gunas, right? Each of them has their own characteristics which we need to utilize properly. We have three passengers in the car all the time. What we need to determine is who is driving it. वो जरूरी है खाली. And only one driver can drive a car. You can't have two drivers. There's only one driver. And that is why we are reading all of this. Have satogun in the driver's seat at all times and have rajogun and tamogun in the service of satogun. Then it's perfect, right? Because tamogun nahi hoga to aap so nahi payenge, aap rest nahi kar payenge. There is no rest without tamogun, right? There is no continuity of actions without tamogun because tamogun is what brings inertia. But when tamogun is being driven by satogun, then you will form good habits and then you let tamogun take over. Then those habits become a part of your daily life. Right? You use tamogun to put yourself to sleep, and then you use your tamogun to determine how much you want to sleep, at what time you want to sleep, at what time you should sleep, at what time you should wake up. All of this is satogun in the ascendancy, but yet you're doing tamasic activities at certain periods of time, which is important. But tamasic activities being done in the service of satogun. So what we need to constantly determine is not कि ये activity tamoguni है, ये activity satoguni है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, right? What is important is you have to recognize who's on the ascendancy. Has rajogun captured your satogun and tamogun? Then you are going to be a workaholic. आपको ये नहीं पता कब stop करना है.
So let me sorry, Visalakshi, I know you're waiting. Let me add to what Tuvina is saying here. Is gunas na, what they do is they create a binding nature. So it is very important for you to be aware of what is on the ascendancy because that is what you will be bound to.
And that is what is going to determine
So-
your future movements, right?
Yeah. So when you are experiencing an activity, and like Tuna said, you're going to experience tamas activity. Like you, there is no way you can live a life where you won't have useless activity as part of it. Right? You will experience it. But the question is, experience it with certain level of awareness. That, oh, you're sitting here, you have to wait for somebody for an hour. Maybe you do nam jap, maybe you cannot do nam jap, maybe you're not, but it's okay to be in that moment, experience and move on. Don't allow it to create a further breeding ground of doing more useless activity. And that's something we'll have to constantly bounce out of. We have to become aware so that it does not become binding for us. It doesn't become something we're attached to. It's okay for us to watch a movie, but it's not okay for us to watch 6 hours of a movie. That sacrifices our sleep and then we wake up unfresh. Right? But that doesn't mean you can't watch a movie. Please, by all means, interact with the world, watch a movie. Right? So that's the awareness that you need to have, that you can indulge in some of these activities, but and like sleep, you will indulge in it with purpose, but don't get attached to it. That I want to sleep more, I want to take afternoon nap, I want this also, I want that also. No, do what you need to for your body to be refreshed so that you're ready. Right? Ha, Visalakshi, please.
No, I got the answer, Sharon, so I forgot to raise the hands down.
This shloka should be studied in relation to the background of the shloka 14 and 15, in which the attainments after death are dealt with. There is a postulated that the physical form in which birth takes place are governed by the tendencies which predominate at the time of birth. In this shloka, the Lord tells of evolution in the very life and the influence which the gunas exercise on it. In fact, the tendencies at the time of death are the sum total of tendencies deliberately fostered during the lifetime. It is necessary to emphasize this fact so that every moment of life may be spent cautiously and the tendencies may be fostered in life, which may come to happy consummation when the end approaches. Deliberate efforts to foster sattvic tendencies not only lead to happiness and enlightenment in the life, but also ensure appreciation of felicitous experiences with suitable form after leaving the mortal coil. The binding nature of all the gunas. It is true that fostering sattvic tendencies result in happiness and enlightenment, but it is also true that it does not loosen the shackles of form of howsoever subtle the sattvic tendencies may be. Rajas and tamas tendencies bind one to dynamism and inertia respectively. The three gunas are thus compared to chains, be they made of gold, silver, or iron, which keeps the individualized self bound. The evolution from gross to subtle may be compared to the ascent of flight of stairs, which is in three parts. One wishing to go to a room at the top of the stairs has to claim the lowest part and the middle part and the topmost stairs successfully. But it would not presume to get stuck at any part, howsoever pleasant it may be. Even the uppermost steps have to be left behind if one has to enter the room on the rooftop.
So there are two points here, right? So the first one is that the guna that is in the driver's seat that we are most conscious of practicing defines or determines our next life, next birth, right? So with sattvic guna, with sattvic in the driver's seat, your all of us honestly have done something right for us to be where we are. And that's why we have a rise of sattvic guna. We have an opportunity to bring it into driver's seat. But what it's also telling us is that's not enough. Because all of us might be blessed with sattvic, being identification with sattvic guna, practicing the right sadhana, having the right book. All of that exists. But just like a flight of stairs, we'll have to leave our association of doership completely for us to rise above sattvikta. Right now, we could be practicing sattvikta by being in sadhana, by being in satsang, but there is still a subtle sense of doership. We've not given up our doership at all. It is when we give up that doership, we move away from our gunas completely because we no longer identify with ego, which is bound by the gunas. Our identification now is one and fully with the soul.
Moksha कि जो feeling है is very similar to the feeling of Satogun. Right? That's why we say Satogun is closest to Bhagwan Ji. But Bhagwan Ji is Kshetra, right? Going back to our 13th chapter which we did before this. Kshetra and Kshetragya. The three gunas are in the space of Kshetragya, the field, right? And Bhagwan Ji is the Kshetra. Atma is the Kshetragya, the knower of the field, the farmer. He is he's beyond the three gunas, and hence he's called the Gunatit. Now we've established Tamogun to Rajogun to Satogun, and we've clearly established that the way to go is to rise from Tamogun to Rajogun to Satogun, but that's not where we stop. Now the question is that, first, that's where we've established that if you're in Satogun, you feel happy, you feel calm, you feel peaceful. That's what I want in my life. Then why do I need to not stay in Satogun and go past it? I'm happy to be in Satogun. मुझे यहीं रहने दो, Satogun में ही रहने दो. And that is where all the questions about, yeah, I'm a very good person, na? I do all the right activities, na? So then why do I need to read Gita? Why do I need to go past this? Why do I need to say कि मुझे life में मेरी तो life बहुत अच्छी है, मेरी तो life बहुत मजेदार है, मैं बहुत खुश हूँ life में, मुझे सब कुछ मिल रहा है life में. Why I want to come back into this life, right? All of us have had these kind of questions, है ना? The thing is that what he explains, he Satogun also binds. That was the very first page of this chapter. Satogun, ये तीनों ही chains हैं, है ना? We've talked about it at the beginning of the chapter. The first thing we saw was how does Satogun bind? Let's remind ourselves of that now. How does Satogun bind, and why do we need to even leap past that? Rajogun, Tamogun, we all understand how it binds. Satogun binds because जो happiness है, जो हमें calmness है, peacefulness है, it is also attached to a certain VVGP. It is attached to a certain outcome. It is attached to a certain, we feel happy and calm with certain people, but we feel agitated with other people. So it is conditional. It is attached to certain people, right? Similarly, our calmness and happiness may be attached to certain types of activities. मुझे meditation करने में बहुत calmness मिलती है, मुझे dance करने में बहुत calmness मिलती है. I feel calm when I'm with nature. I'm calm when I'm hearing certain music. I'm calm when I'm with certain friends. I'm happy when I'm with certain friends, right? So these are all conditional. Moksha is very similar to Satogun in the sense that you are in a space of calmness, you're in a space of happiness, and you're in a space of bliss. However, that feeling is not conditional to a certain VBGP. You are constantly in a space of happiness and bliss and calmness, irrespective of your external circumstances. That is the difference between being in Satogun and being Gunatit. And when you are Gunatit and you are able to retain your calmness, your happiness, and your sense of peace, irrespective of your VVGP, you have attained moksha. You don't just attain moksha in an afterlife. You attain moksha in this life. And that moksha is this feeling of Satogun being with you at all times. Nobody vexes you. No, you don't get angered. You don't get upset. You don't judge people. कोई भी हो सामने हो आपके, you are in a space of happiness and calmness. कुछ भी आपके आसपास हो रहा हो, you are not agitated. That is you being Gunatit, you being one with God, because you cannot be that without being able to see everything around you as a manifestation of the Lord. The day you achieve that, and the day you're able to see God in everybody, in everything, and everything is a dispensation of the Lord and Him acting through it, तब आपका हर action Lord के साथ है. At that stage, you have become one with Lord. At that stage, you have become Gunatit. At that stage, you have achieved moksha in this life. And that is the aim. This is the difference, because now you're free. You're free of VVGPs. ये नहीं है कि मुझे यही चीज चाहिए तभी मैं खुश होऊंगा, यही सिचुएशन चाहिए तभी मैं खुश. It doesn't matter. आप कहीं पे भी होंगे, कुछ खाना मिले ना मिले, सर पे छत हो ना हो, सामने वाला आपको कितना ही गाली दे रहा हो, it would not matter to you. Then you're going to be happy, and then you will act out of happiness for everything under the sun. This is why we need to also leave Satogun behind and eventually transcend beyond the gunas and become gunati, because that is liberation. Liberation from VVGPs, liberation from sorrow. Make sense? Okay. Do the next one. Ritesh, do you want to read the next one?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The Lord now speaks of the steady evolution of the individualized self to gain self-realization.
This is the Mahavakya of this chapter. Every chapter has a Mahavakya, which basically talks about the crux of that chapter. Okay, so this is the Mahavakya now. Nanyam gunebhya kartaram
Nanyam gunebhya kartaram
yada drashtanupashyati
yada drashtanupashyati
gunebhyascha param vetti
gunebhyascha param veti
madbhavam so adhigacchati.
madbhavam so adhigacchati. When the seer discerns that there is no performer of actions other than the gunas, then realization of that entity who transcends the gunas leads one to attain to my being. Attainment of supreme state by perceiving the self as being beyond the gunas. So long as the individualized self has the belief of being the doer of actions and the experiencer of their results, it results in a state bound by the gunas of nature.
So
The
underline,
sense of being a
so underline this line. This is the crux of what Tuhina and I just explained, which is as long as you are the doer of actions and experiencer of the results, sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic, the gunas will bind us for further experience of our karma. Yeah.
the
If you
sense
are doer, sorry, one more thing. If you are the doer, अगर ego आपकी बोल रही है ना कि ये मैंने किया है, तो you have to become the experiencer. If you are the doer, you will experience all its results. If Bhagwan Ji is the doer, then he will experience all the results. And that is how you become free of the results of the actions. अगर आपने अपने आप को doership से free करा लिया, and you're like, I am not the doer of these actions, right? He is the doer and he is providing all resources. He is providing. तो आपने अपने आप को उन results से भी, you have protected yourself from the results. That is the roasting of the seeds of actions. That is the act of karma.
So it's like the game of snakes and ladders, right? So you start at 1 and 100 pay, you exit the game. That means we all go to moksha, right? And you get ladders along the way, you get miracles along the way, but you also have snakes. So you can reach what is, and where does the last snake sit? The last and the longest snake sits on 99. So you could think you're rising and rising and rising, and you're doing really well, and you're doing everything in your life. But that last snake sits on 99 and brings you back to square one. And what does the snake represent for us in this journey? Our ego and our vasana, our desires. They are so subtle and they're there constantly as our accompaniment. Right? That's why this becomes really important. You could have the right sattvic bhav up to 98. But if you have a sense of doership, you have ego, you have desire, then you're back to square one.
बेसिकली कोई भी वासना है, सावधानी इज साधना, इसलिए बोलते हैं हमारे उसमें, राइट? सावधानी इज साधना, that you have to be very careful. Even if there is one small vasana that is left, that is going to cause your downfall eventually. So however small that shatru may be inside of you, however small that enemy of that vasana might be inside of you, don't take it lightly. Take it seriously and make sure that Bhagwan Ji is able to kill it, right? Like keep observing it. Don't let go choti si cheez hai yaar, chodo. No. Even that smallest of the vasanas will bring you down. And remember, jitna upar jayenge hum, the higher we go in our sadhana, the harder the fall. The higher we go, the harder the fall. That is why in a lot of Purans, we read about a lot of sages who have done amazing tap. They have gone really, really far. And then one small thing has caused them to fall so down below. And now Manu, when he was born as a deer in his next life, because last में जाके तप इतना करने के बाद he got attached to a little baby deer, right? And the last thing in his mind was that big deer when he fell to his death. उस एक attachment से he fell from कहाँ से वो जाके नीचे सीधा animal form में, है ना? या भाग्यश्री.
So when we say about believing that God is a doer of the action, so we do some acts or things which are good and some which are bad. Let's say I did a good thing of helping someone. So I think it's easy for me to believe that, okay, I didn't help someone. God gave me the resources. With that resources, I helped someone. And so it was not mine. The resources were of God, and God wanted to help that person. It just happened through me. Okay. But in a let's say an act which is not good, a bad act where I am hurting, sorry, an act, let's say, where I am hurting someone by my words. In that act also, how should I think that, okay, I didn't say it or I didn't hurt this person? In such cases, how do I change the doership?
So this shloka that we are reading right now is going to answer your question. This very shloka. ठीक है? इसको पढ़ते हैं and then we'll come back to answering your question. Essentially, it is going to be about like who is the doer and how, what is the cause and effect. We have to understand that cause and effect, and we have to really understand it well. And this shloka is going to touch upon that. So let's read it.
The sense of being a doer resides in the ego, which is controlled by the three gunas. Of course, the gunas are kept activated by the power of the self. The true status of the self is that of being a spectator only, as explained in chapter 13, Shloka 22. If the self has the belief to be the doer, the assumption would be based on ignorance. But realizing that all actions are done by the gunas of nature, there is a feeling of standing apart only as the illuminator, witness, or seer, totally uninvolved in the action. Then there is no liability to experience their results either. And then the state of the Supreme Being is easily attained. This is exactly what has already been said in Shloka 22 of chapter 13. The body performs all actions, but there is total uninvolvement in them or in their results.
So this is where we understand how do we, how should we look at, हम लोगों ने chapter 3, chapter 4, all through the first 6 chapters, right? Karma Yoga mein, this is what we have learned. Now the thing is, how do we practice it is being told in this shloka. कि जब हम कहते हैं कि we give all the, we say that I am not the doer, है ना? When we did not know about gunas, तो हम लोग कैसे बोलते थे? That everything is, give everything to भगवान जी. ये हमें बता दिया कहता है, right? So as a concept, it was understood. Now the question is, and I think we've constantly struggled until this chapter, कि यार कैसे? Exactly the question that Bhagyashri said. It's easy for me to say Bhagwan ji did this when it is a good thing. How do I justify a bad thing being done by me? Now we get to the second level of how do I detach myself from the doership? And the way is to understand that this world is bound by cause and effect. Okay, cause and effect, and this cause and effect is determined by the three gunas. Based on which guna is in the ascendancy, a certain thought will arise and which translates itself into action. All right, and that, so the guna कैसे बोला है ना, गुण ही गुण में बरतते हैं. Gunas act with gunas. All action is done by the gunas, And based on that action and the rules of the nature, a certain consequence follows, which then creates another, it impels another action, which impels another action. It's like a domino, right? The domino falls, and then the next set of dominoes fall according to that, according to the design, according to the rules that have been created. Okay. Now, when you are able to recognize that fact that I am not the doer of actions, it is the gunas that are the doer of action, and you're able to create that distance to be able to observe, that's the first victory. Now, when something good happens, तो हम खड़े होके बोले कि यार गुण ही गुण में बरत रहे हैं, सत्वा की एसेंडेंसी थी, उसने ये कुछ अच्छा काम हो गया उससे, ठीक है। ऐसे ही कुछ बुरा काम हुआ, आपने किसी को डांट दिया, चिल्ला दिया, और या आप एक तमोगुणी एक्टिविटी कर रहे हैं, इन दैट मोमेंट ऑल्सो इफ यू आर एबल टू स्टैंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम योर सेल्फ एंड से Tuhina is right now in a space where she is unable to act as she should. She wants to just slouch and watch TV. That's all that she wants to do. Or, oh, I saw her getting upset at Veda. ठीक है, उस तमोगुणी एक्टिविटी में भी if you can detach yourself and say, oh, okay, इस time पे तमोगुण is in the ascendancy, I can see how तमोगुण is acting itself out, and then give that also to Bhagwan ji. Ki Bhagwan ji, I see this demon right here, I see this monster right here, please take this away from me, help me to, like, you come in and you conquer this. I cannot do this by myself. I'm watching it. I need you. I've shown the light on it. Just Vishwamitra had taken Ramji in the forest to kill the demons when the demons were coming and spoiling his yagya. Hai na? So the same thing. Vishwamitra didn't go and kill them. You and me cannot go and kill these demons. But we show them to Bhagwan Ji. Even when you are doing a tamoguni activity, even in that moment, you can recognize that gunas are playing themselves out. Right now, I am in the grip of a tamoguni, of tamogun, and give it to Bhagwan Ji. In that moment, you are able to detach yourself and you are able to get away from the negative results of that tamogun to the extent that you're able to achieve that seer role. You get what I'm saying?
So
You basically have to become an observer, whether you're doing a positive activity or a negative activity, and understand that I am not doing it. Right now, my nature is filled with a lot of tamogun. इतना तमोगुण है, इतना रजोगुण है, और इतना सा सतोगुण है, इसलिए ये एक्टिविटीज तो होंगी ही होंगी, हो रही हैं.
so
Can I like increase satoguni behavior dharma in my life so that satogun keeps on increasing, and then itself will drive other activities. ये सब भगवान जी की, और भगवान जी ही मुझे power देंगे to increase that satogun.
so
Make sense?
allow me to
To some extent.
explain this differently. If I can bother you, Bhageshri, can you repeat the question that you asked?
So it's like when I do a good thing, it's easy to change the doership to God, because whatever resources I have is because of God, and it's God's resources, and God helped that person through me. It was not me. But let's say I am hurting someone by saying something which hurt that person. I feel that I have hurt that person, or like I have done this bad thing. So the doership is with me. How do I change the doership to God, that God has hurt that person?
So I'm going to say. So the first thing is the question itself, the way you phrased it. You have identified yourself with ego rather than God. I do, credit goes to God. I do something bad, credit goes to me. Your identification right now is with ego, not with God, not realizing you are God. When you say we are souls, the capital S self, that is God, that is us. But our identification is that of ego. Now, that's the first observation I wanted to highlight, is where your identification right now is very clearly sitting. The second thing to share here or to observe here is that in our mind, we have a lot of voices. And that's how we recognize who is talking. We have a voice of intellect, which controls our senses. Correct? We all have experienced that. We have a voice of ego, which is convinces us to own and control and judge and make ourselves feel better. That is not the intellect, that is ego. Similarly, we have the voice of the capital S self. So in chapter 16 of this book, right, in Gita, and what we're trying to understand is understanding the core nature and principles which define the capital S self and the core principles and nature that define our ego. So when we operate from a particular bhav, we are either operating from the capital S self and its principles, or we are operating from the bhav which fuels the ego. So in any action where you feel you are hurting someone for your pleasure, or to put that other person down, or to teach him a lesson, or to feel good about yourself, that's all ego. If you are hurting someone, but with the bhav and intent that this is the righteous war, for example, with Arjun, then you're doing it with the right bhav, you're still doing God's work. The action wouldn't matter. It's the bhav and purpose with which you do the action that matters. And all that sits within you. And the discredit that you referred to, right? If I hurt someone, I take the blame. You only take the blame because you have to experience the prarabdha, the consequence of that action. That's it.
There's one more layer to that, right? See, जब किसी और को hurt हुआ and you became an instrument of hurting them, right? Then remember that Bhagwan Ji is not just Vishnu ka form, or he is not just Brahma ka form, right? There is a Shiva also, who's the destroyer. There is a form of Bhagwan Ji that's Rudra also, right? So if somebody had to experience something because of their own prarabdha, right? उनको नेगेटिव कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस तो आएंगे ना, सबके पास आएंगे, हमारे पास भी आएंगे, उनके पास भी आएंगे, सबके पास आएंगे. Now in certain cases you become a source for that to happen to them. All right, so they experienced what they experienced. उनको वो experience करना है क्योंकि वो उनका प्रारब्ध है, और उनको उसको experience करके उनको कुछ grow करना है उससे. What they do with that now is on them. चाहे आपने उनके साथ कुछ किया है, चाहे किसी और का इंस्ट्रूमेंट बनाओ, कोई और इंस्ट्रूमेंट बनाओ, to get that experience to them. That is all भगवान जी का लेन देन. That's not you.
But then I would easily keep hurting people, talk anything what I feel, and then think that, oh, it was their prarabdha, the God did it.
Come back to the first point that
Correct.
I mentioned.
Wow.
Right? What is the
Both
bhav
the
and
things.
purpose with which you're doing it? Forget the consequence right now.
See,
The consequence of other people, it's irrelevant. The consequence to your karma is what is relevant.
correct. So while
If
you
you're
can
hurting
continue,
people, there is no joy in your life.
Hmm.
There are lots of selfish, aggressive people in corporate world, etc. And the illusion is, oh my God, they still succeed. They have so much money. They have all of this. And I just constantly, not I just like people constantly always observe that how unhappy they actually are on daily life, their family life. There's just no peace in them. Then the question is, why are you doing it?
and coming back to you Bhagyashree, when you say that okay फिर तो मैं लोगों के साथ बोलती रहूंगी, उन लोगों को हर्ट करती रहूंगी बोल बोल के कि it is their प्रारब्ध, that is correct. You will continue to do that and you can continue to do that. They will experience what वो उनका प्रारब्ध है, इसलिए वो experience कर रहे हैं. But आपने in the process, if you are not checking yourself, you are creating further प्रारब्ध for yourself also, ना? Because then you will come back and you will experience it. So yes, you can do it, but ultimately, if you are not doing it with the right bhav, then you are not doing it as an instrument of the Lord alone. Okay? then you are creating more prarabdha for your own self. You are creating fruits for your own self.
There is this.
So you can't just go on hurting people with that attitude कि उनका अगर आपने सब कुछ करने के बाद भी गलती से आपसे कुछ मिस्टेक हो गया है या आपने even if you lose your anger, okay, you reacted to something और दूसरे को आपने चिल्ला दिया उसके ऊपर and you hurt that person, ठीक है, उसके बाद आप क्या कर रहे हो? Are you feeling vindicated? Are you feeling happy about what you did? Yes, that person totally deserved it. Or do you come back after a point and you realize कि नहीं यार मेरी मिस्टेक थी and what caused me to get there, है ना? उसके बाद जाके ठीक है जो उसने एक्सपीरियंस किया, जो होना था वो हो गया, मुझे ये क्यों हुआ, मेरे को भी कुछ लर्निंग थी इसमें, मुझे कुछ सीखना था इसमें, उसको कुछ सीखना था उसमें, मेरे को क्या सीखना है, मैं जाके भगवान जी के पास बैठूं और मैं उनसे सीखूं मेरे को क्या सीखना है, और वो सीखे वो उसको जो सीखना है. And then don't feel bad about it. Don't hold yourself responsible. Don't keep feeling guilty. Don't burden yourself down with those negative thoughts. Use it to move forward.
The only work you have to do is do it on yourself. The rest of it will take care of itself.
Yeah, but the point what I'm trying to say is कि then you don't feel guilty कि अरे मैंने ये कर दिया, अरे मैंने ये कर दिया, जो होना था हो गया.
Learn to forgive them and
learn to forgive yourself.
We learned that.
And move on.
Yeah, Vijay, you had a question.
You're on mute, Vijay.
I was trying to say that like if we have the sattvic qualities in the driver's seat and still we are talking harsh to someone, that is the thing, right? Like anyway, if we are in the right attitude on the bow, then it's not going to come through. The harsh words is naturally not going to come through.
Correct.
You will try to correct them or fix them or whatever it is, you will have to do in probably a much better or a nicer way.
Correct. My language will change. Our bhav reflects the language which comes out of our mouth to say the same thing. You're absolutely right. Should we do a round of takeaways now?
Yeah.
Instead of moving ahead?
He's
Okay.
got
Let's finish this first, then we'll do that. Okay?
Here it would be pertinent to note that the external marks of a person sometimes gives a totally misleading idea of the state of his inner being. A man completely submerged in tamogun appears perfectly still, as if he is in samadhi. It would be highly erroneous to mistake him for a seer. His inactivity may itself be an action, or be even a perverse action, which may bind him strongly to its degrading results. It would be futile to delude the mind into thinking that by taking some drugs and inducing deep sleep thereby, the state of perfection would be attained. The heavy preponderance of tamas leads to the depths of perdition. Similarly, under the strong influence of rajasic activity, a severe shock from some external source might render a person motionless and totally inactive. But surely such a person cannot be taken to be a seer. The perfect state is attained by the deliberate performance of duties with full effort, but without any expectation of gain from their results, and maintaining the thought that all actions are performed by the gunas of nature. Alternatively, the discipline of Jnana Yoga may be practiced to identify the self with the supreme self. Through either of these two disciplines, one is positioned in the state of being a seer, and then one attains the supreme state.
So you should underline this line, right? So that you understand the difference between Rajasic activity and Sattvic. The perfect state is attained by deliberate performance of duties. Right? We've talked about this many times. Choose the fact that you have an opportunity to do seva and do duty, and maintaining the thought, as Bhageshri said, is they're all performed by the gunas of nature, by God. Do it willingly, all your duty, do it with the right bhav as an opportunity that of seva. That's our goal.
Also, this paragraph highlights something that we've been talking throughout this chapter, ki there is no activity by itself, which is sattvic, rajasic or tamasic. And hence, looking at activities of a person, you cannot determine from the outside whether this person is sattvic ascendancy or rajasic or tamasic. So it all depends on the internal state of being, which determines कि क्या हो रहा है. पूजा भी तामसिक हो सकती है. On the outside of it, ये कितनी सात्विक activity है, but you can be indulged in a completely tamasic puja, or you may be completely indulged in a rajasic puja, जो सिर्फ rituals के लिए करी जा रही है ना. And we have all experienced that growing up. हम सब ने राजसिक और तामसिक पूजाएं इतनी देखी हैं बचपन में कि हम बड़े होकर हमको ऐसा लगा है at one point of time most of us have walked away from rituals. A lot of us have turned away from religion because religion has been constantly only reduced to doing some ritualistic activities. So है बहुत ही सतोगुणी एक्टिविटी. हम मंदिर बना रहे हैं, हम मंदिर में पूजा कर रहे हैं और हम लोग सब, बट अल्टीमेटली जो एक्शंस हैं वो सिर्फ रिचुअल्स हैं. वो इतना राजसिक है कि रजस इज नेवर, एंड देन रजस, जो भी कुछ रजस है वो अल्टीमेटली तमस में जाएगा ही जाएगा. देयर इज नो वे फॉर रजस टू नॉट स्लाइड इनटू तमस व्हेन यू हैव रजस इन द एसेंडेंस. हमेशा ही हो, राइट. सो एक्टिविटी बाय इटसेल्फ इज नॉट अ मार्कर ऑफ सतोगुण, रजोगुण और तमोगुण. आप बिल्कुल तमोगुणी एक्टिविटी करते हुए भी सतोगुण में हो सकते हो, सतोगुणी एक्टिविटी करते हुए भी सतोगुण में हो सकते हो, या सतोगुणी एक्टिविटी करते हुए भी तमोगुण में हो सकते हो. सो वी कैन नॉट जज अदर्स. हम अपने ही खाली इंटरनल स्टेट जान सकते हैं, किसी और की इंटरनल स्टेट हम कभी नहीं जान सकते. इसलिए वी कैन नॉट हैव जजमेंट ऑन अदर्स कि यार ये सतोगुणी है, ये तो भैया वो आप नहीं कर सकते. अपने ऊपर ही वी हैव टू ओनली फोकस ऑन आवरसेल्व्स, बिकॉज़ द ओनली पर्सन हुज इंटरनल स्टेट वी नो इज आवरसेल्व्स. एंड अपने ऊपर जाके देखो कि हम कहाँ. दैट इज वेरी क्लियरली मेंशन्ड हियर. Make sense? And just a reminder कि why do we keep saying कि रजोगुण से तमोगुण आएगा ही आएगा. One very big example was given in the chapter 1 of Gita. Chapter 1 starts with it's called the Arjun Vishad Yoga, right? So Arjun Vishad Yoga कैसे start होता है? It starts with full on रजोगुण, right? He tells भगवान जी क्या कि take me to the center of the battlefield. I want to see कौन आया मुझसे fight करने के लिए, right? Full of ego, full of doership, full of like I am the one fighting the battle, और मैं बहुत बड़ा महावीर योद्धा हूँ, right? Now show me who all have come to fight against me. Started with a full rajogun and it ended in tamogun, where he dropped his gandiv and he is in complete vishad, confusion, delusion. He does not know any longer what is his duty. Should he fight the war? Should he not fight the war? Right? So rajogun, which is steeped in worship, which is steeped in control, which is steeped in sense of ego, will always end of the day will lead you to tamogun of some kind. Okay. With that, we'll close the class and we'll go into what do you call it? Takeaways. Let's do takeaways.
Should I go first? Then, so my takeaways were, first of all, about how my desires, there are two routes to it, either yoga or connecting with God, and which could be lok sangrah or doing a duty or a seva, the action, or bhog, which is just fulfilling my desire and just going in that endless cycle of greed. Second, about the how the attachments are like weights in a balloon and how they're holding me back. And the idea is to get rid of all these attachments so I could rise towards the goal of self-realization or moksha. And those weights are those tamasic thoughts which are holding me. And how the criteria for rajasic thoughts are control, ownership, and doership. That is something which identifies it. And how all and the fact that all these gunas exist in my life. I cannot think that it's only sattva gun that has to exist and the rajasic and tamas don't exist. It's just have to choose what is in the driver's seat and what the other two can support. Because and that it's all about awareness and about seeing myself and self-awareness and complete and focusing on myself and not on other people. So
Well said. Thank you, Rituj.
My takeaway is to know what are the reactions, what I'm doing based on my own habits, habit oriented reactions, and also to be aware of those reaction, and then to um, the reactions are basically come out of the tamogun or rajogun kind of a guna, to just to take a pause that time and then to change it to satoguna kind of a bhav in that moment. So that needs that awareness, which I have to be very aware of my mind's activity moment to moment.
Just that pause is Satogun in action.
Right.
You cannot have that pause without Satogun on the ascendancy. The moment you implement a pause, Satogun is on the ascendancy. 100%.
And again, that balloon example is perfect. So I can just focus on the internal state, whether my bhav is right. Because my bhav is not right, then definitely I feel the weight, which is coming down. What I'm doing when I'm doing the any kind of action or thoughts. So I had to kind of there is a very good visualization where how it feels inside. Yeah, that is my takeaway.
Thank you.
I can go next. So in the Rajogani, pretty much, as you guys mentioned, pretty much all of us are in the Rajogun. So when we are in the Rajogun, it's very easy for us to go into the, Tamo Gun if we are not paying attention. And you guys also mentioned, when you have the right bhav and doing the Rajasic activity, that means we are turning into the Satokan gradually. And if you have the attachment and desire to go along with the Rajasic activity, then it means you are, going down towards the tamasic, things. And also, I really, as everybody mentioned, I really like that balloon example you gave, where the, helium balloon is filled with and if you are putting weight on it, it's going to come down. So if you are going to put your desires and ownership and control and doership to it, it's going to pull you down to tamas. So those are my takeaways.
Thank you, Anita.
My takeaway is whatever we are doing day-to-day activities through our behavior, the action, bob, and purpose, the three of the steps we have to follow: action, bob, and purpose. We have to feel we are not doing through the God or through the higher power. We are doing whatever actions. If the lightness, if we start feeling, then the bob, action, bhav, and purpose, it should be right way. Through the God, we are doing that, right? Like my takeaways, I have to do every day, every actions through this action and bhav and purpose should be right. Through the God, I'm doing it. I'm not the doer. So I would like to implement that.
Thank you, Vizalakshmi.
My takeaway is how deep rooted the concepts are, right? Like even though we understand by word, by terminology and so on, by the questions that we ask, and how much longer journey that we will still have to take is the takeaway from it.
So here in Shloka 18, where we talked about happiness, where we are in Satogun if happiness is attached to the outcome and it's conditional. So yeah, I think we all feel, or I feel happiness sometimes, but it is because of a particular outcome or activity. And sometimes it's unconditional, but it's just momentary. It's just happened for a moment when it's unconditional. Otherwise, mostly it depends on the condition. So um, I'll I'll focus on these things and try to increase the unconditional happiness, like the duration of unconditional happiness. Right now it's just like a momentary, the blissful thing I feel just for a few seconds when I'm out in nature or something like that, but just for a moment. So so to be in Satogun and then yeah, not be the happiness, not my happiness to be dependent on the outcome or activity. That is one thing. And then second thing, when we talked about the doership, that I am not the doership. I don't want to be the doership of the actions, whatever actions I do, whether it's good or bad. So a few days ago, I was just I was praying and chanting, and I was like thinking about the mistakes which I have done. I was thinking about the mistakes which I've done until now, and I was not able to forgive myself. But I was chanting, and then after a few days, I just got this feeling that it was not me who did that mistake. It's not possible that I know who I am or who I should be. So it was not me who did that mistake. It was not me at all. So I think I will try to put that in present also every time the thing is happening, that I am not the doer.
Very nice. Two things here, Bhagyashree. One is, it's a very good observation you've had where you can see that most of your happiness is conditional, but there are these small moments of unconditional happiness, right? Now, you observed, from what I heard, that those moments, those fleeting moments of unconditional happiness happens when you are in nature. Okay. Now, next time you are out there, and this is for all of us, okay, for all of us, because we all have experienced it in some situations. When you are in that space, go deep into that space to see why or how what you're experiencing, the how and the why of what you're experiencing. And you might discover two things that are going to be pertinent. One is that in that moment, you are actually in that moment. You're not in the past and you're not in the future. Okay. You're really, really, really present in this moment alone. Because this moment alone is the portal to happiness, is the portal to Bhagwanji. Okay. Past and future will not get you there. Only in this second, in this moment here, provides that portal. So you are really present to this moment. Second, there is happiness hasn't come from anywhere. It hasn't come from that nature. It hasn't come from a flower or a tree or a breeze or a mountain or wherever you are, right? That happiness has come to you because you have, in the moment you were in that present moment, there was no desire clouding your inner happiness any longer. There were no desires inside of you. You were not running after something. You were not seeking something. You didn't want to get anywhere. You didn't want to be somebody else. There was no desire of any kind left. And the moment the cloud of desires goes away, the inner happiness just shines forth, is what you experience. Like, try and see the truth of this, experience it for yourself. The day you will experience that truth, that, oh yeah, this happiness has come to me because right now I am here and I don't want to be anywhere else and I don't want to create anything else. I'm happy and complete right here. Purnamada Purnamidam. And that is what has caused this bliss and happiness. And जब वो feeling आपकी और ज़्यादा हो जाएगी, constantly हो जाएगी, that is the moment of moksha. That's the experience of moksha. That is how you will feel at all times. That is what is moksha. Being liberated is that feeling of happiness, unconditional happiness at all times. And that can only happen when there is no cloud of desire blocking your view from that experience of that inner happiness. Then second thing you said, you felt bad about doing something, felt guilty and unhappy, right? I'll give you an example for you to understand how Bhagwanji acts through us. Kaikai had sent Ram away for 14 years, right? And Kakai is like celebrated is like, okay, she was like this person. She was actually a very, very good person. And she really loved Ram like her own son. In that moment when Mandodari was talking to her, it was Bhagwanji only because it is his Leela, right? He wants a certain number of things to happen, certain number of actions to happen. He got Saraswati to confound Kakai, and Saraswati confounded Kakai's mati, which caused her to behave in a certain manner. And after that, she came out to, like, she later on came to her senses, right? But it was Bhagwanji's doing. He wanted a certain outcome. Okay, so hota hai kai baar. Like there are times I do something and I'm like, in this particular moment, how did I forget? I always do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. How did I forget to do this? And now the consequences are negative, right? ठीक है, you make peace with the consequences कि ये मुझे experience करना था, ये दूसरों को experience करना था. In that moment, this kind of a thing happened. तो भगवान जी की मतलब मति कुमति हो गई या सद्बुद्धि नहीं दी भगवान जी ने उस टाइम पे, और ये हो गया. Let it go. Learn from it what you had to learn, experience what you have to experience because of that, without creating further prarabdh, by creating further actions out because of that. React नहीं करना उन consequences के ऊपर, है ना? So those are the two things. Nana, do you want to share your takeaway, or do you want to put it on the?
No, sure, I can go ahead. Uh, it's a very interesting part of the chapter right now, and I mean, my takeaway would be that what you said about maintaining this status quo. So most of the time, we try to do the balancing act of, okay, this much sattva and this much rajasic and tamasic activities we do, and we just stuck there. We don't want to. We will probably not. I mean, that's my experience. Like I'm stuck there in that status quo mostly. I'm not doing a bit more of it. I'm just trying to maintain the balancing act most of the time. So that's where I have to work. And of course, the bhav of every action. I think whatever we do, it's mostly the gunas, and if we keep the bhav right, probably if we focus on the bhav and break down all the purpose of all our actions, then maybe we will not. Then it would be easier to understand that we are not the doers, but it's the Paramatma who's doing everything, and it's the gunas at work. If the bhav is as per the purpose of our life, so those would be the takeaways for me, I guess.
Thank you, Nana.
Breaking down every action to the bhav level. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And another thing is कि अगर हम लोग stuck feel कर रहे हैं ना, stuck, and we are like, we're not able to move forward, there is only one way to move forward. Okay, only one way to move forward, and that one way to move forward is to do tap. तप करना है, यज्ञ करना है. यज्ञ से देवता पुष्ट होते हैं. That's what we learned in chapter 4 and 5. Right? Devtas inside of us get stronger when we do tap, when we do yajna. Right? So that is what we need to create for ourselves. Ab now, see, we are all going to go to him eventually, correct? We'll all go to him. We all are on that path. Okay, we are all going to reach there eventually. And कैसे reach करेंगे? We cannot reach there without our consciousness getting elevated. That consciousness, for that consciousness to get elevated, तप तो होएगा ही होएगा. Now, whether that tap is inflicted on us from outside, or it is taken up by us voluntarily, the choice is ours. या तो हम अपना तप voluntarily लेकर बढ़ा लें and use that to go up, or if we don't and we keep getting stuck, at some point of time externally tap हमारे ऊपर आएगा. It will be inflicted upon us, and that will cause us to that will create that situation for us to move forward. All those difficult situations that we face in our lives are that tap that come to us to help us move forward. And as we are all have recognized, we all experience growth only in the moment of difficult times. Only through tap do we experience growth. There is no experience of growth in the time of calmness and happiness. तो जब calmness और happiness है हमारी life में, तो we should voluntarily introduce tap for ourselves to be able to help us increase our capacity through our own volition. Yeah, Visalakshmi.
Can you please explain what is the difference between the awareness and consciousness? Because it's more or similar, right? The awareness, you are practicing every situation, the aware for every situation, but the consciousness, through the awareness, you can get the consciousness, or like what is the difference between both?
Awareness is a property of consciousness. Consciousness is Bhagwan Ji himself. And us being aware is us connecting to him. When we are connected to him, only can we be aware of ourselves. That very act of being aware is the act of connecting to him. Because awareness cannot happen without consciousness.
Sorry, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the class. Anyone has any other thoughts? Okay. So then we'll do the closing shlokas.
Om Sarvesham Swastirбhavatu Sarvesham Shantirбhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaः Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhavet Om Ashuto Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Narayan Narayan everyone. Narayan Narayan बोलो बेटा.
Thank you, Narayan Narayan.
Narayan Narayan बोलो सबको.
Oh, is it your birthday?
Oh, happy birthday to Hina.
Thank you.
Sing that song. I don't know the song. But...
No,
No, it's okay.
Kavita ji, do you know the song?
I have it. I can send it to you.
Happy birthday to Hina.
Can you get some rice, please?
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to Hina.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Just some plain rice.
Get some plain rice. Plain rice low. 12.9.
Yeah, I didn't get it. I'm not sure how to get it. Quickly, I want to play with you. You know that, right?
Yes, let's wish Mama. Okay.
Yes, I do it quick.
So everyone's speakers open. I've sent the birthday greetings. Okay, so I'll lead it and then you can follow. and then we can sing the birthday song. So I don't, let's focus it on the birthday girl. Hey, Mama, आ जाओ एक second. Mama, आ जाओ. Hey, Tuhina,
Hey, Tuhina.
Tuhina,
Tuam,
Tvam,
Tvam,
Yashasvi,
Yashasvi,
Tejasvi,
Tejasvi,
Ojasvi,
Ojasvi,
Chiranjeevi,
Chiranjeevi,
Kirtiman,
Kirtiman,
Buddhiman,
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 Shraddhavan,
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 Bhaktiman,
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 Satviki Buddhi,
Satviki Buddhi,
Satviki
Satviki
Buddhi,
Dhriti,
Satviki Dhriti,
Satviki Dhriti,
Satviki Bhav,
Satviki Bhav,
Satviki Bhav,
Nishkam Karma Yogi Bhava.
Nishkam
Karma
Nishkam
Yogi,
Karma Yogi Bhava.
Janamadinam Idam Sake Shantu
Yashake,
Sarvada Mudam Prathamame Bhavasatishi Ishvara Sada Tvam Chara
Sada Tvam
Punyaka
Char Rakshatu
Kirti
Punyakarmana
Mata Jivanam
Marjaya
Tava Bhavatu
Jivanam Tava Bhavatu Sarthakam
भवतु
Bhavatu
सार्थकम
Sarthakam
सागर में एक लहर उठी तेरे
Tere
नाम
उठी
Naam
तेरे नाम
की
की
सागर में एक लहर उठी
सागर में
तेरे
एक
नाम
लहर उठी तेरे नाम की
तुझको
तुझे
या
मुबारक
आत्मा
खुशियाँ
ज्ञान की
आत्मज्ञान की
तुझको है आनंद में जाकर मिल
जाकर मिल जाना
जाना तुझको है आनंद
आनंद में
जाकर
जाकर
मिल
मिल
जाकर मिल जाना
जाना तू है सुंदर
तू
सुंदर
सुंदर
फूल इस
फूल इस
संसार
संसार की
तू है सुंदर फूल
सुंदर फूल इस
संसार
संसार की
हैप्पी बर्थडे
birthday to you
हरे कृष्णा टू यू हरे कृष्णा
Hare Krishna
टू
to you
हरे कृष्णा हरे
Krishna Hare
कृष्णा
Krishna
हरे
Hare
कृष्णा
Krishna to you
राधा रानी
May Radha Rani bless you
मेरी
May Radha Rani bless you
कृष्णा
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Krishna to
to
you.
you
You want to do Hare Ram? You can do Hare Ram.
Too late now.
No, you can do. Thank you so much for your best wishes. Really, really, I'm grateful. Thank you.
Have a blessed day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
नारायण नारायण
Narayan,
Uh,
Narayan. Have a lovely, lovely week ahead.
Thank you, Tuhina Abhinav.
Thank
And
you.
Vedant, thank you for reminding us Tuhina's birthday.
that was clearly his purpose of existence.
Thank you
Chalo.
so much. Thank you.
Uno, Daddy.